Hey everyone, welcome to module number 5. We are actually at the halfway point of the course, which is exciting. I hope you're taking a little bit of time to get outside, enjoy some of the summer weather, and even if you have to be out there reading, at least you're outside. Um, Again, today's focus is going to be on module number 5, and we're at the halfway point. And really what's happening now is that we're going to take our focus from strategic planning, strategic management, which we've been focusing on for the past several weeks, and we're going to begin to morph now into our marketing focus. And we're specifically looking at healthcare and marketing within healthcare. But tonight we're going to focus on, today, whatever time I guess you're looking at this video, but we're going to focus on really communicating the strategic plan, identifying how to build an implementation plan around your strategies, and then we're going to morph over into healthcare marketing and look at a history of healthcare marketing and get some baseline information on marketing and healthcare. This module does have a ton of reading in it. I want to just warn you right up front, and you've probably already seen it. There's 5 chapters of text. There's also a million objectives for the course for this module. And so I've listed those out in the introduction, but I've also highlighted, like I do each week, so you know exactly what I think is the areas that you want to focus on in the module. And so those are highlighted in the introduction and objectives list, and also within the PowerPoint slides. There's 2 decks in this module because we have to finish the strategic planning deck and we have to move over into the healthcare marketing deck. There is a written assignment and a discussion post in this module, which is the 6th of July, and there's a holiday in there. So this week is busy. You've got a holiday, you've got a lot of reading, but just pace yourself and just keep at it. I've reduced the web resources and the additional reading besides beyond the text. There is one infographic which I'd like you to look at, which I think you'll find interesting on healthcare marketing. And so do look at that. And then there's a discussion question and a written assignment this module for the very last time. And so in the module are outlined the objectives. Again, I noted that there were several of those. Focus on all of them. And then we'll jump into what I think are the high points of the strategic planning process. And so we've been talking about this now this is our 5th week looking at strategic planning. Again, we're staying in the umbrella of strategic management, focusing on our strategic planning vertical. We looked at the situation analysis, which really looks at the environment, internal, external, the competitive environment in your geographical region. We looked at strategy formation and those 4 different types of strategies: directional, adaptive, market entry and exit, and then competitive strategy. And now we're going to go into the last bucket in our last module. We're looking at strategic planning. We're going to talk about the planning of the implementation of the strategic plan. And probably the most important part in the actual achieving of organizational goals is the implementation component of any effort. We can plan, we can talk about, we can write documents that really reflect where we want to go. But the bottom line is, can you really execute, and can you really deliver, and can you really take something from point A to point B and deliver the result that you're interested in? And so implementation is absolutely key. And so we're going to focus on that in this module. And so when we look at the implementation plan, there's really 3 areas. There's always a consideration for that. Remember, we talked about the value chain. It's composed of the sort of the pre-service area, the point of service where you deliver the product or the service, and then the after-service experience. And so you're going to want to be thinking about that. The second piece is you want to look at what are the support strategies that are in place to enable your strategic planning process. That's culture within an organization. What's the organization's ability to make change, to implement change, to survive and to sustain change? There's an organizational structure that needs to be in place in terms of how an organization is set up, whether it's a functional structure that's set up based on functions, whether it's a hierarchy of organization by different areas, or whether it's a matrix, or maybe a combination of both or all 3 of those different structures: organizational, functional, and matrix. And then the other piece, which is really important in terms of the strategy implementation, is the action plans that get built. And those objectives that are identified, the actions that are built off of those timelines, who's responsible for what resources are going to be needed, and then those critical success factors, which really look at results and the measures that you're going to want to be monitoring, because monitoring and meeting and reviewing plans really guarantee that the organizational momentum will be sustained throughout the planning and the implementation process. Again, we looked at in this chapter the same model that we saw in the last couple of modules, where the healthcare value chain was outlined, and we focused really, when we were talking about value chain, we focused really on the top part of that model around pre-service, point of service, and after service. And now we're going to go down to the lower half of the model and really look at and be thinking about the culture of the organization. What are the shared beliefs? What do people do versus what do they say? How is the organization structured? And then what are the strategic resources that are needed to be engaged around any kind of strategic planning process? And so, again, this is a logical progression that we've been on. We remember that we started out at the very initial point of doing the assessment and then developing all of the different strategies that we're going to look for and that we're going to implement. And now we're down at the implementation component of this whole process. And so, as with all of the different phases, there's a process for developing the support strategies or building up those support strategies, and those are listed nicely in your textbook again for the support strategy component. And so again, you want to first review your value chain and see what is it that's going to be impacted, how do they play, what role do they play. You're going to want to do your internal analysis review, because again, you're going to want to keep your eyes on what are the capabilities, the strengths, and the weaknesses within the organization. You're going to want to assess whether or not that culture is going to need to be refined or changed or maintained. You're going to want to make sure that the organizational structure that an organization has in place will ensure that the strategy can be carried out. And then you're going to want to ensure that the supporting resources such as human resources, IT, HR, technology support within the organization can help you within your structure and within your plan. When you look at culture, you want to make sure that you review the content on culture that's listed in the module and in the readings. Really very, very important, because culture is going to impact how the change is implemented, whether or not the change is sustained, how the change is going to be communicated. And you want to make sure that you're focusing on those important components around culture. Can't stress enough the importance of culture in sustaining and implementing any change. In terms of function, I mentioned earlier about the different models that are listed. There's an excellent slide within the text that shows sort of the pros and the cons of the different models, whether it's a functional model, a divisional model, a matrix model, or a combination. All of those different models have strengths and weaknesses, and there's pros and cons to both. You know, folks are often wishing that they did not have a matrix relationship, but that they had all the resources reporting into them, and then they feel that they could sustain change. But then oftentimes you find yourself working in silos and not working across organizational verticals to achieve the results that are needed when all stakeholders have to be at the table. In terms of the strategic resources, it's also critical, and that's really the focus of the implementation plan, that you engage all of the stakeholder components within the organization to the process. And so the financial areas, HR support that's needed, the IT support, and then if there's any technologies around non-system, non-technology type components that also need to be engaged. For example, if you're in a hospital, what kind of medical technologies do you need, or other sophisticated technologies that are different than just information services or technology services. And then the next focus is really around the communication strategy and developing the plan. And this is really the bottom function, the final function in terms of the logic of developing action plans. And as you're building out your plans, you're going to want to make sure that you're focusing on the different steps that are outlined within the development of the action plans, and those are listed also, for you in the textbook. Very easy to follow, and many of you have done action plans, but it's so important. Probably the most important component, in my view, of an action plan is that you communicate specifically and clearly the objective that you're trying to achieve, that you have the subcomponents of the project clearly outlined, you have the folks who are responsible, that you have the timelines when those initiatives and those actions are due, you know what needs to happen in sequence, and that there's a strong governance with a strong leadership team driving all of those different activities. And we've talked a lot about strategic momentum and how momentum really occurs when people are put in a room and they're held accountable to achieve a result. Everybody knows what the result is. Everyone's clear on the deliverable, and there's regular ongoing monitoring, and plans of correction are implemented whenever there's a need to course correct. So those are the final components of the strategic management discussion. Make sure you read through the paradoxes of the strategic management process. I think they're excellent. I wish we had time to be together in class so we could really talk about those together as a group. It's a bit hard on a video, but read those and spend some time thinking about the strategic management paradoxes. There's also information on strategic momentum, and then also about your action plan management, and remembering that the action plan management is key to strategic momentum. And then there's a list of do's and don'ts for strategic planning that I thought were also super helpful. So this wraps up really the discussion around strategic planning. I hope that you identified some things that you can take away and actually implement in your own workday. It's really an excellent textbook. The content's really very good, and hopefully we've shared with the things that are important, and you have some tools around the strategic planning process. There's nothing better, though, than to be said about any learning than actually putting your hands to the plow and actually doing some hands-on learning. So make sure that you're looking for opportunities to set plans in place within your work site and to offer up being a part of new initiatives and planning and implementing new projects, new programs, even if they're not at the organizational strategic level. The things that you learn in implementing a single project are mirrored on a broader scale the higher up you are in the organization. So we're going to change channels now. We're going to begin to talk about marketing. And we're going to look now at the history of marketing and marketing as it relates to healthcare. And really there's a number of different stages within marketing, sort of the history of marketing in the U.S., particularly where it really started here in America. And all of those 4 stages are really, it's important to have some background on those. When you think about it, the first stage really was really during the industrial age when where the U.S. began to really gain more capabilities to deliver services and products. And the first phase was really around focusing on product differentiation. And so, companies were starting to put out products and to sell products. And a lot of this was related to the war effort. And really the first stage was really around what makes my product different than yours. And so you could think about this in terms of cigarettes. What made a Camel different than a Marlboro? And so advertising and marketing efforts are really focused on product differentiation. And then you can think about a movie or a TV show like Mad Men, and you can see the next phase, which was really around selling and hitting sales targets and really pushing products and finding ways to really begin to track and monitor sales goals and projections. And you see those shows that focused on, the sales and salesmen and the life of the salesman. And so that was the second phase. The third phase, which we're really still experiencing in many ways, is really the customer focus stage. And really the focus here was not so much on being a salesperson, but being a service person. And so oftentimes you saw salesmen or saleswomen become account executives or focused on service and delivering value. And then the selling became a secondary function because it was discovered that people really buy from people they have relationships with. And so focusing on the consumer, what did they want? And this very closely aligns as we move into what we're now in this 4th stage, which is really around the rise of the electronic age and the World Wide Web and social media and targeting marketing efforts around what consumers are actually interested in. And so instead of a company pushing their product and trying to get a consumer to pick their product, is identifying what is it that the market wants or individual wants, and tailoring the product towards those specific interests of the consumer. And so healthcare marketing has an interesting growth pattern. If you look at the website that I stuck in the module, it's really pretty neat to see how things have evolved over time. I think it's from like the 50s until now is really where you see a tremendous acceleration. And it's interesting to see how, within healthcare, how marketing really went from education to patients or consumers Then it focused on the services. Then they began to focus on competition. Again, now the healthcare industry is also very focused on consumers and what do the consumers want. And as you think about healthcare marketing, it's really important to understand what differentiates healthcare organizations from other organizations because their marketing approaches are going to be different. And really, there's 3 points around healthcare marketing that really talks about healthcare organizations being different. The first one has to do with how that the economic forces within healthcare and within the marketplace are very different than in a traditional market. First of all, there's limited visibility to how much something costs. And so when I go buy a new car, I'm looking at a price tag, or if I'm going to buy a shirt on Amazon, I'm going to see 30 products. I'm going to see all the prices for each one, and then I'm going to be able to make my decision based on which product I think has the best value for the price and the best quality. And so the market doesn't work quite that way in healthcare, particularly with cost of services not being visible. The users or the purchases of the service, not the purchases of your healthcare insurance, but sort of the purchaser of the specific service, the patient, really don't ever have a financial transaction unless it's a copay or deductible. And most of the time, even that's very confusing. The other piece that makes a healthcare organization different is health professionals that work in healthcare organizations. Oftentimes, the base of healthcare organizations oftentimes are physicians and nurses and clinical folks. And ethically, they are committed to delivering services and delivering care for patients, regardless of the financial implications. And so that's a very different model than whether or not you're going to buy a pizza or a new article of clothing or a piece of technology. The third piece is that the nature of healthcare consumers, we approach in healthcare consumers differently than in other organizations and other industries. Other industries look at a certain target market, where for healthcare, everyone buys healthcare. Everyone needs healthcare service, and the market is huge. And so healthcare marketing is critical to healthcare organizations. And it's important to understand why healthcare organizations are different and why they need to have different approaches to marketing. When you look at the history of healthcare organizations, there has been a resistance, and there's been a number of factors that slowed down the healthcare industry from taking on marketing type functions. In the early period of healthcare in the U.S., really there was no perceived need. And there really was no marketing approaches from which healthcare organization could build upon. And really that all changed in the 80s around consumerism and competition, et cetera. There was also a resistance to healthcare organizations running like a business. And I can remember even in my early days of my career working in Catholic healthcare, how finances were not important. It was really about the mission of an organization, and particularly in an organization that had a religious base. There's also been a concern, I think, historically within healthcare organizations around what is the value of marketing? How is there a measurable ROI on marketing efforts, and how do you determine that? Oftentimes those are soft, and it's hard sometimes when you work in an organization where the margins are very thin to be able to convince the financial executives that marketing is something that should be funded. And then there's ethical and legal constraints that are particular to healthcare organizations. And there's a number of regulations and rules around self-referrals, around how you market your own services to generate business. And that's because of all of the stakeholders financially that are involved within the healthcare ecosystem, particularly the federal government and the state governments that are very much involved within the funding of healthcare. And so when you look at the different areas that focus or that contributed to the resistance of the growth of healthcare, there really was a number of developments that also encouraged the development of healthcare marketing. And one of those was really the competition within the industry. And we began to see healthcare systems merging. We began to see acquisitions and increasing competition. There also was a period of time when there was hospital sector overcapacity, and DRGs were put in place around reimbursement from Medicare, and we saw a number of hospitals either merging or closing because they needed more patients and they needed to begin to market. The focus of the consumers I mentioned earlier and wanting to grow and promote the business also are ongoing developments that have occurred over time that have contributed to the goal to begin to market healthcare services in a more structured way, like other industries. And there's really a number of reasons why healthcare should be marketed. When you think that, marketing, it puts healthcare into a good light amongst consumers, it builds awareness. It even it puts organizations within a positive light within the industry, and identifies the leaders and shows what they're doing and how they're making a difference. And then it helps consumers also to be able to enter into making selections around where they want to go for services, what's the best services that are available for them. And so all of that activity needs to occur within the healthcare organization. And within the healthcare organization today, you won't find one without a marketing area. Some much more stronger than others, but basically they focus on really supporting not only the marketing function, but even the strategic planning function. You think about how oftentimes the marketing area will actually do that exterior service area competitive analysis. And so marketing departments tend to even contribute to the strategic planning process, which we've been spending a lot of time talking about. And they support the business goals. So marketing areas help to ensure as being supporting strategies that strategic plans are achieved. They help to establish a relationship of an organization. There's also pieces around operational components that marketing areas do to perform market research, to again assist with strategic planning, and even be a part oftentimes of the strategic plan with a marketing section to be a component of that plan. Marketing departments educate patients or consumers or members, and they also have a key role in promoting a company and influencing decision makers. And when you think about the approaches that marketing departments take in terms of making their services of a healthcare organization, creating awareness, making their services known to stakeholders, really there's the mass marketing technique, there is the target marketing approach, and then there's micro marketing that really focuses on super specific audiences. And that we're seeing more and more in that space, where there's really a evaluation of data, decisions being made on data to help to really micro focus marketing efforts around consumers. And that's benefits to the organization by making sure the right folks are engaged. And then it also saves resources so that you're not doing blanket campaigns around your marketing processes and documents and mailers, and all the rest of that ends up to a circular file. So when you look at who is a focus of marketing, or who's impacted by marketing, it's really those folks who are the consumers of the services. It can be patients, it can be members within a health plan, it can even be the customers who purchase the health insurance products for their members. And so there's physicians, there's clients, there's a number of stakeholders that are involved in the marketing process, from being recipients of materials that are targeted, mass mailed, or micro focused on those stakeholders. The last piece I want to cover before we end is I want to make sure that you are focusing, if you learn nothing else in this module, even though I want you to get as much as you can out of the content, really focus on the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Those are the keys. Anyone at any cocktail party who asks a question of you and you tell them you're taking a marketing course, you can tell them what the 4 P's are. And those are absolutely critical. They've been around forever. They're industry standards. And so I want to make sure that you really have an understanding of product, price, place, and promotion within the 4 P's of marketing. And so that's the conclusion of the module. Please make sure to dig into your readings. My office hours are on the syllabus, as you're aware of. Look forward to having further discussion with you. We'll look forward to your seeing your discussion posts and your written submission, and to build that strategic momentum that we learned about in our strategic planning course. Have a great rest of the module, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again.